Located approximately 110 kilometers northeast of Paris in northern France, the Oise-Aisne Cemetery Memorial stands as a solemn testament to the sacrifices made during World War I. Plot A through D encompassed a final resting place for 6,013 American soldiers who lost their lives in combat in the region. Among them, 597 soldiers remain unidentified, while the memorial honours 241 American servicemen who went missing in action during battles nearby, their remains never recovered. Encompassing 36.5 acres, this site is the second of 8 significant permanent American World War I military cemeteries established outside the United States. Initially established on August 2, 1918 as a temporary burial ground by the 42nd Division, it was later designated a permanent cemetery by Congress in 1921. The French government generously provides the site free of charge for its ongoing use as a military cemetery. The vast majority of the 6,013 soldiers and support personnel interred at this site perished during the Second Battle of the Marne and the Oise-Aisne campaign. Included among the soldiers here who lost their lives is American poet Joyce Kilmer. The cemetery also includes American servicemen initially laid to rest in temporary sites, later relocated here at the request of their families for overseas burial. Graves of Jewish soldiers are marked with Stars of David, while those of other faiths bear a Latin cross. Each headstone is crafted from white marble sourced from Carrara, Italy. Of the 6,013 graves, 596 are dedicated to unknown soldiers. Like the Tomb of the Unknowns in Arlington, Virginia, these graves are marked, "Here rests in honored glory an American soldier known but to God." Approximately 100 meters away from the main cemetery lies a secluded area known as Plot E, where the remains of 94 American military prisoners are interred. This separate section serves as the final resting place for former soldiers who faced dishonorable discharge and were subsequently executed by hanging or firing squad at a military jurisdiction. Their offences were committed during or immediately after World War II, resulting in the deaths of 26 fellow American soldiers and 71 civilians from various nationalities, including British, French, German, Italian, Polish and Algerian, both male and female, who either raped or murdered. During the Second World War, a total of 98 servicemen were executed by the US Army following general courts-martial for charges of murder or rape within the European theatre of operations. Originally, the remains of these individuals were buried near the sites of their executions, which occurred in countries ranging from England and France to Belgium, Germany, Italy and Algeria. In 1949, the remains of these men were reinterred in Plot E, a designated section specifically created to accommodate what the graves registration referred to as a dishonored dead. According to standard procedure, all of these individuals had been dishonorably discharged from the US Army the day prior to their executions. Access to this section is restricted and visitors are discouraged, although the area is maintained by cemetery caretakers who regularly tend to the lawn and trim the hedges. The grave markers concealed by shrubbery are identified with sequential numbers rather than names, making individual identification impossible without the corresponding cemetery key. Additionally, no US flag is permitted to be raised above this section, and the graves face away from the main cemetery across the road. However, among the graves of the 94 predominantly identified American military prisoners, 2 individuals stand out. Eddie Slovik, the sole individual interred in Plot E without a conviction for rape or murder, was executed by a firing squad on January 31st, 1945 for desertion. Slovik served in the United States Army during World War II and holds the distinction of being the only American soldier to face court-martial and execution for desertion since the American Civil War. While travelling to his assigned unit near Elbeuf, France, Slovik and Private John Tanky, a comrade from Fort Meade, sought cover during a nighttime artillery assault and inadvertently became separated from Company G. The next morning, Company G moved forward, unknowingly leaving Slovik and Tanky behind. Encountering a Canadian military police unit in the town, Slovik and Tanky stayed with them for 6 weeks. Tanky subsequently wrote to their regiment to explain their absence, and arrangements were made by the Canadians for their return to duty with their unit on October 7th, 1944. The next day, on October 8th, Slovik approached his company commander, Captain Ralph Grosh, expressing his apprehension about serving in a frontline rifle company and requesting reassignment to a unit stationed in a rear area. He confided in Grosh his intention to flee if assigned to a rifle unit, seeking clarification on whether such an act would constitute desertion and result in a court-martial. Grosh affirmed the consequences and denied Slovik's request for reassignment, assigning him instead to a rifle platoon. On October 9th, the following day, Slovik deserted from his unit. Despite efforts by John Tanky to dissuade him, Slovik remained steadfast in his decision, affirming that it was final. He travelled several miles to the rear and approached an enlisted Kurkata military government detachment of the 112th Infantry Regiment, presenting him with a note that stated, "I, Private Eddie D. Slovik, confessed to desertion of the United States Army. At the time of my desertion, we were in Albert in France. I came to Albert as a replacement. They were shelling the town and we were told to dig in for the night. The following morning, they were shelling us again. I was so scared, nerves and trembling that at the time the other replacements moved out, I couldn't move. I stayed there in my foxhole till it was quiet and I was able to move. I then walked into town, not seeing any of our troops, so I stayed overnight at a French hospital. The next morning I turned myself over to the Canadian Provost Corps. After being with them 6 weeks, I was turned over to American MR. They turned me loose. I told my commanding officer my story. I said that if I had to go out there again, I'd run away. He said there was nothing he could do for me, so I ran away again, and I'd run away again if I had to go out there. The cook escorted Slovik to a military policeman, who then brought him before his company commander. Upon reading the note, the commander advised Slovik to discard it to avoid further consequences, but Slovik refused. Subsequently, he was presented before Lieutenant Colonel Ross Henbest, who offered Slovik an opportunity to dispose of the note and return to his unit without repercussions, but Slovik declined again. Slovik was then detained and placed in the division stockade. Lieutenant Colonel Henry Summer, the division's judge advocate, made a final attempt to persuade Slovik to rejoin his unit, offering to drop the charges against him. Summer also proposed transferring Slovik to a different infantry regiment within the division, whereas past would not be disclosed, providing him with a fresh start. Despite these offers, Slovik remained resolute, stating, "I've made up my mind, I'll take my court-martial." On December 9th, Slovik wrote a letter to General Dwight D. Eisenhower, the Supreme Allied Commander, seeking clemency. However, the issue of desertion had become widespread in France, exacerbated by the surprise German offensive known as the Battle of the Bulge on December 16th. This offensive caused significant casualties among US forces, bypassing and encircling units and severely testing infantry morale to an unprecedented degree during the war. Recognizing the need to discourage further desertions, Eisenhower confirmed the execution order on December 23rd. The news came as a shock to Slovik, who had expected to receive a dishonorable discharge and a prison sentence, similar to the punishment meted out to other deserters from his division during his confinement in the stockade. The following year, on January 31st, 1945, Eddie Slovik was executed by a firing squad at 10:04 am near the village of St. Marie-aux-Mines. During World War II, more than 21,000 American soldiers faced various sentences for desertion, with 49 receiving death sentences. However, Eddie Slovik's execution stands as the sole instance in which the death penalty was carried out. Antoinette Slovik, Eddie's wife, pursued her husband's remains in pension until her death in 1979. In 1981, Bernard V. Kalka, a former Macomb County, Michigan commissioner and Polish-American World War II veteran, took up Slovik's case. He tirelessly advocated for the return of Slovik's remains from the army and succeeded in 1987 when President Ronald Reagan approved the petition request. To facilitate the process, Kalka raised $5,000 for the exhumation and reinterment at Detroit's Woodmere Cemetery, where Slovik was laid to rest beside his wife Antoinette. Louis Till, an African-American GI, enlisted in the United States Army during World War II after facing trial for domestic violence against his estranged wife, Mamie Till. His decision to join the army was primarily to avoid imprisonment. However, on July 19, 1944, while serving in the Italian campaign, Till was arrested by military police, suspected along with 2 fellow soldiers of the murder of Allied civilian Anna Zanchi and the rape of 2 others in Civitavecchia, a town northwest of Rome. Private James Thomas Jr. was granted immunity in exchange for testifying against Private McMurray and Till. Thomas detailed that Till and McMurray planned the crimes meticulously before committing them. Till was subsequently court-martialed on charges of rape and murder. Found guilty, he was hanged in Aversa, a city near Naples, immediately following his co-defendant Private Fred A. McMurray on July 2, 1945. Louis Till, the estranged father of Emmett Till, whose murder at the age of 14 in August 1955 sparked the civil rights movement, led a life and met her death steeped in mystery. Details surrounding Louis Till's fate remained largely hidden until they emerged following the controversial acquittal of his son's killers a decade later. There is considerable debate over Louis Till's involvement in the crime for which he was executed. In 2013, United States Army Colonel French McLean, in a comprehensive book detailing all court-martials and executions of GIs in North Africa and Europe during World War II, acknowledges the lynching of Till's son. However, he argues that despite the lack of justice for Emmett Till's murderers, records maintained by the Judge Advocate General's Court indicate that justice was served in Louis Till's case. This has been me, Jack, and if you're in plot here right now, please leave a comment down below.